Nestled in the beautiful southern Alps of Italy lies the Stava Valley, the epitome of the unspoiled alpine resort. Then, a terrifying tidal wave of mud surges down the valley at 90 kilometers per hour, destroying everything in its path. 268 people perish in just 209 seconds. Now, using advanced computer graphics, we reveal exactly what went wrong. Disasters don't just happen, they're a chain of critical events. Unravel the fateful decisions in those final seconds from disaster. Europe, Italy, Tessero. July the 19th, 1985. The peaceful village of Tessero lies in the Stava Valley. Its idyllic surroundings make it a popular holiday destination. Today, visitors and locals alike are out enjoying the sunshine. 12:10 p.m. Umberto and Clemente de Florian are helping their father, Lucio, with his carpentry business.
It was a typical summer's day. I was 15 years old, and me and my brother were going to do some work for our family business, owned by my father.
They load their van and head off up the Stava Valley Road. 12:15 p.m. Back in Tessero, Alma Trettel has arrived home from work and serves the lunch that her mother has prepared for the family.
That day I came back. The table was laid. Everything was ready to eat.
12:20 p.m. 20-year-old Lucia Morandini is helping her father Mario in his sports shop.
That day I thought that seeing as a new supply of stock had just arrived, I'd choose a present for my father because it was his birthday in a couple of days' time.
It's a perfect day in the Southern Alps. But further up the mountain, there is something that makes the Stava Valley far from normal. Ever since the discovery of rich mineral deposits in the 16th century, Prestival Mountain has been mined. Local residents have lived a peaceful coexistence with the mining companies who work the mountain for fluorite, a valuable chemical substance. Extracting fluorite from mountain rock produces large amounts of waste material in the form of sand and water. This waste is known in mining as tailings. It's also the name given to the massive dams where the tailings are filtered off and collected. There are two of these tailings dams in the Stava Valley, one built above the other. 12:22 p.m. Umberto, Clemente and their father Lucio are driving up the road from Tessero straight towards the dams.
I remember that my father was singing because the next day was the 25th anniversary of the Tessero Choir.
In town, Alma Trettel and her family are all sitting around the kitchen table to eat. And in their sports shop, Lucia Morandini thinks she's found the perfect present for her father.
We went to the storeroom. We opened the boxes and took out all the clothes. There was a nice tracksuit that I wanted him to try on.
Over the years, the 30-meter-high tailings dams have become part of the local scenery. Obscured by a dense pine forest, they're largely ignored by the townsfolk.
We all knew the dams were there, but we never imagined there would be the slightest danger.
But today, all that will change. (12:22 and 55 seconds). Without warning, the dam bursts. But first, no one knows what it is.
I saw the smoke on the horizon and I asked, "What's that?" It really looked like a fire.
At 12:23 and 25 seconds, 230,000 litres of mud, sand and water from the two dams course down the valley. The town of Tesero is only 3.5 kilometers away and directly in its path.
We heard a huge noise. We thought it was roadworks.
At 12:23 and 45 seconds, the colossal mudslide hurtles into the small hamlet of Stava, where more than 100 hotel guests are sitting down to lunch. In one blow, they are all killed. Traveling at 90 kilometers per hour, the mudslide is now racing towards Umberto Clemente and Lucio de Florian.
My father didn't waste a second.
He said, "Get out quickly and get up the slope."
12:24 and 45 seconds. The wave of mud continues on its path of destruction. Next in line, Tesero. It's lunchtime in the Italian mountain town of Tesero. A peaceful afternoon, but none of the 2,500 inhabitants have any idea that a massive mudslide is surging towards them. Just north of the town, it's already destroyed the van belonging to Clemente, Umberto and Lucio de Florian. At 12:25 p.m., the mudslide engulfs Tesero. Alma Trettel is at home having lunch with her 4-year-old son Marco, Stefano, her husband, and her mother Maria. She hears a rumbling noise.
I hadn't quite leaned over the balcony when I saw what was coming down the road.
Seconds later, almost 250,000 litres of mud hit Alma's streets, smashing 17 of its 25 houses to pieces. Further down the street, Lucia Morandini is working with her father in his sports shop.
My father was trying on the tracksuit when we heard a huge noise. Out of curiosity, I said, "I'll just go and have a look."
The devastation continues as the mudslide follows the quickest route down the mountain. Entire buildings, streets and forests are wiped out. 12:25 and 44 seconds. The ancient bridge that has stood for 10 centuries is almost completely destroyed. Finally, 40 seconds later, it's over. The mud crashes into the valley floor, where at last it loses its momentum and flows into the river Avisio. The catastrophe lasts just 3.5 minutes, but it leaves 5 kilometers of chaos in its wake. The beautiful Stava Valley has been reduced to a wasteland. Clemente de Florian narrowly escapes the mudslide by running uphill.
I stopped and turned around. There was nothing left. Absolute silence. Not even a bird or a fly. Nothing.
Their van is totally wrecked, submerged in mud, 50 meters from where they left it. Clemente frantically searches for his brother and father.
I heard my brother's voice calling me, and I just saw his face sticking out of the mud.
I couldn't move because I was completely covered in mud. Then I saw my brother and called out to him.
So I started to scrape some of the mud off him, and he immediately said, "Where's Dad?"
Meanwhile, 100 meters away, local sculptor Giuseppe Mick sees the destruction from his workshop window and races to the scene. He's one of the first rescuers to get there.
I saw a figure, a human figure lying, hugging a tree. When it spoke, I went closer. I recognized by the voice that it was Alma. Almatrete.
The force of the mudslide has catapulted Alma over her first-floor balcony. Giuseppe finds her a full 300 meters from where her home used to be.
I had no idea where I was. I could just feel grass below me, and I didn't know what was happening.
Giuseppe and his friends fashion a makeshift stretcher out of Alma's jacket. They carry her to safer ground and a waiting ambulance. Lucia Morandini is completely buried in mud and the wreckage of what used to be her father's sports shop. Only a small gap in the debris allows her to breathe and stay alive.
I was scared I would suffocate, or die of thirst, or hunger, a very slow death, and that I would prefer to end it quickly. But I couldn't even do that. I couldn't move at all.
Luckily, people hear Lucia's cries for help and dig her out of the mud. She's rushed to an ambulance and taken to hospital. "1 p.m. Just half an hour after the accident, local firefighters, alpine rescue and police are on the scene. In all, 7,000 rescuers take part in the recovery operation. A fleet of 19 helicopters and 26 ambulances are on standby, ready to ferry survivors to hospital. But they are hardly needed. Out of 281 missing, only 13 people are pulled out alive. Umberto de Florian, Lucia Morandini and Alma Trettel are 3 of those 13. While they are being treated in hospital for trauma and broken bones, rescuers are still searching through the rubble for their families.
I kept asking after my son, my mother, and my husband. But they wouldn't tell me anything.
89 men, 120 women, and 59 children perish in the mudslide. A total of 268 lives lost. Alma's husband Stefano, her mother Maria, and her 4-year-old son Marco are amongst them. Lucia's father Mario and Umberto's father Lucio also perish. It's one of the worst dam bursts ever. After 3 weeks, the rescue operation is over. As the funerals begin, the town of Tesero is in shock. The whole of Italy feels a deep sense of loss. Not 1, but 2 dams have burst. Finding out why is a national priority. What caused the 2 dams to break, unleashing 180,000 cubic meters of mud on the Stava Valley? Now we rewind the events of that fateful day and go deep into the investigation to reveal what really happened. Advanced computer simulation will take us where no camera can go, into the heart of the disaster zone. On the day of the tragedy, the regional court launches an inquiry to determine the exact events leading up to the disaster. Professor Pietro Colombo, an expert on mudslides, heads the investigation team. Using their data, we can now piece together the chain of events to find out what really caused this terrible tragedy. Professor Colombo's immediate focus is on the 2 dams. What caused them to burst? Early claims are that the trigger was a natural phenomenon. Was one of the worst dam bursts ever caused by an earthquake?
It was a deafening noise. I got out of my car. The ground was shaking. The car was shaking. It really seemed like there was an earthquake.
Mudslide expert Professor Richard Chandler was consultant to the accident inquiry.
The foothills of the Alps, where Stava is, are an earthquake area. One can speculate, and one can also rely on evidence from a seismometer in a valley next door to the Stava Valley, which was in place to record possible earthquakes.
There's a seismometer in nearby Cavallese. Investigators study the readings for the exact time that the dam burst, 12:22 p.m. Amazingly, it shows a substantial tremor followed by another large spike 30 seconds later. The investigation team think they're onto something. It looks like earthquake activity. So they carry out more detailed research. Other seismometers in the region barely register the tremor, if at all. This is highly unusual. It means the tremors were very localized, too localized to be an earthquake. The dam burst couldn't have been caused by an earthquake. Investigators need a new lead. They know that the Southern Alps are an abundant source of minerals. The region is dotted with mines. The standard practice for exposing a new rock face is to blast it. Could a controlled explosion be what they see on the seismograph? Could that have caused the dams to rupture? Professor Giovanni Tosatti was an expert witness at the Stava Valley disaster trial.
There were discussions about the effects of explosions being carried out at nearby mines that could have been transmitted to the area and could have been the trigger of the collapse.
To test this theory out, Chief Investigator Pietro Colombo tries something unique. He sets up controlled explosions in 3 mines within a 31-kilometer radius of Stava to see if such a blast could have been the culprit. Explosive experts detonate the dynamite. Analyzing the readings, the investigation team are baffled. The explosions barely register on the equipment. These seismographs look nothing like the one recorded on the day of the accident. Whatever caused the 2 Stava tailings dams to burst, it wasn't an explosion underground. So what did cause the 2 seismometer readings 30 seconds apart? Professor Colombo figures that they must have been caused by the dam burst itself. He deduces that the first shock is the upper dam collapsing. The contents of the upper dam pour into the lower dam. Under massive pressure from this huge load, the lower dam crumbles too. Mud, water and sand explode from the dam and smash into the valley wall opposite, causing the second tremor on the seismograph. Investigators now know how the dams gave way. Their next task is to work out why. If external factors like an earthquake or an explosion were not the trigger, it must have been internal. Something inside one of the dams caused the collapse. And as the upper dam collapsed first, it becomes the new focus of the investigation. Tailings dams are widely used in the mining world. Fluorite production requires massive quantities of water. It makes up 95% of all waste products in the process. A huge machine called a hydrocyclone then separates the sand from the water. Sand builds up into the wall of the dam. The hydrocyclone pumps the water into the center of the dam, creating a reservoir. The safety of the structure relies on the outer wall of the dam, which, like a giant sandcastle, remains dry and solid. And the liquid in the middle slowly drains out through massive pipes. Tailings dams are effectively self-building. The more waste, the bigger the wall of the dam. The 2 dams at Stava grew from ground level to over 25 meters high in 2 decades, dwarfing buildings around them. Although not unusual for tailings dams, With little else to go on, investigators decide to look into their design. The investigation finds that the mining company has kept detailed records of the upkeep of the two dams. They examine them and make a breakthrough. Six months before the disaster, the mining company suddenly has a problem. In January 1985, a small landslide occurred on the outer wall of the upper dam. This created a giant hole in the wall, a 20-meter gap, for water to leak out. It continued until March, when the mining company carries out an emergency repair. In May, they make further repairs and have to drain both upper and lower dams. The mining company only brings them back into operation on the 15th of July 1985, 4 days before the tragedy. The investigation team focuses heavily on the upper dam. Something strange must have been going on at least 6 months beforehand, causing it to disintegrate. But what? Professor Colombo realizes that the answer is all around him. It's everywhere. It's water. With the absence of any external forces, such as an earthquake or underground explosion, the only explanation for the collapse of the dam is through a weakening of the dam's wall caused by the water inside it.
The moment there is any significant amount of water in the face of the dam itself, then it would immediately become unstable and would collapse. One can do simple experiments on the beach with a bucket and spade and demonstrate when you add water how much less stable wet sand is than dry sand. This is the problem in this particular case.
The small landslide and subsequent hole that appeared in the upper dam wall 6 months earlier is proof. Water from inside the reservoir saturated the outer wall, creating the 20-meter hole. 6 months later, the whole wall gives way. Unleashing a wave of mud that kills 268 people. But the mystery is far from over. Investigators now know that water caused the dam burst, but how did it penetrate the outer wall? What was the final trigger for the dam burst? A dam burst in Italy has wreaked havoc. 250,000 litres of water and mud have coursed through the valley below it. 268 people perish. Now, using advanced computer graphics based on accident reports, we go deep into the investigation to unravel the tragic chain of events. The dam burst is triggered when two tailings dams, huge reservoirs containing wastewater from a mining process, collapse. The investigation team is now certain that the upper dam caved in like a sandcastle. But it's not supposed to work that way. A pipe should drain excess wastewater before it reaches critical volume. Too much water pressure and the water is forced into the wall, causing it to crumble. Investigators are sure that's what happened. But how? They start to examine why. They study the meteorological records for the 66 years before the accident. They make a fascinating discovery. Maximum rainfall in the Stava Valley occurs between May and August.
Contributory factors to the rise of water would have been the tremendous thunderstorms that they typically get throughout the Alps in July and August.
Then, investigators spot that for the Stava Valley, 1985 was one of the wettest years on record. Almost 22% more rain than normal fell. It's a good lead for Professor Pietro Colombo. He's sure that the record rainfall played a part in raising the volume of water. But he's not convinced it's the only contributing factor. He knows the dams must be designed to deal with something as foreseeable as heavy rain. He gets his team to look into other reasons for a dramatic rise in water levels. Suddenly, it all seems obvious. Every year, the neighboring ski resort of Latimar attracts thousands of skiers to its snow-capped mountains. The winter before the accident had been a particularly good one for skiing. A thick snow cover had been added to by regular snow showers. But at the end of the season, something happened that would go on to play a significant part in the disaster only a few months later.
In the spring in the Alps, the snow that fell during the winter melts, and melts relatively rapidly in the course of a few weeks.
Investigators calculate that the water levels produced by the thaw that year were higher than average. Some of this meltwater would then flow down the valley through rivers, streams and underground springs into the tailings dams, raising the water level inside. This solves the pressure question. But Professor Colombo can't believe that increased rainfall and melting snow alone are responsible for such a catastrophic failure. The first time the upper dam sprang a leak was in January, before the rain and snow could have played a part. Investigators desperately need a new lead. They now concentrate on the heart of the accident, the wrecked dams themselves. The breach in the upper dam wall is clearly visible, but the lower dam and reservoir have been totally destroyed. Chief Investigator Pietro Colombo calls in heavy machinery to clear the site. The team begins the arduous task of sifting through the ruins of the dams in search of a clue. After searching through 360,000 tons of mud, silt and rubble in the remains of the upper dam, they find one. It's the drainage pipe, and it's broken. Now they're onto something. They take a closer look at the pipe. Crucially, it betrays signs of an earlier repair. A length of pipe was replaced. But over the years since the repair, the weight of mining waste or tailings placed on top of it have caused it to sag.
Then, with the passage of the years, the tailings built up above this pipe, and the pipe could have pulled out of its end joint, allowing water, which was draining the upper dam, to be discharged into the tailings at a location quite close to the outer face of the dam.
Eventually, it would have been pulled free from its anchor points, leaving gaps and rendering the pipe useless. Now, instead of draining water away, it's actually leaking water back into the reservoir, raising the pressure inside and forcing more water to seep through the dam wall, weakening it more and more. But when did the leak from this pipe reach critical levels? Investigators realized that the emergency repairs that the mining company started just 2 months before the accident are to blame. To carry out the repairs, the mining company had to empty each reservoir. As the water was drained out, the pipe could have bent further out of shape, causing bigger gaps to appear. Then, 3 weeks before the dam burst, the reservoirs were refilled. 4 days before, mining begins again. Waste tailings are pumped into the dam, but the broken pipe can't drain away excess water. And now, rainfall and meltwater are at peak levels. The pressure against the walls from these combined sources of water is too much for the dam to contain, and the water inside the reservoir forces its way out. It takes the path of least resistance, through the outer wall of the dam. Stable only when dry, this wall becomes saturated by the fluid seeping into it.
The stability of the dams at Stava required that the water was kept away from the outer slope of the dam. If any water got anywhere near the outer slope of the dam, it was inherently going to collapse.
Finally, something has to give. The wall of the upper dam collapses, releasing 360,000 tons of sand and water, which surges down the valley, destroying everything. But something still puzzles the investigators. They've rarely seen devastation on this scale. The violence is exceptional. 268 people gone. 3 hotels, 6 factories, 53 houses disappeared. This solitary tree is all that's left of a dense forest, ripped from the ground by the massive force. The devastation is total. Investigators are about to discover something very unusual about the mudslide. A catastrophic dam burst in the mountains of northern Italy releases 250,000 litres of mud and water into the valley below. As investigators pore over eyewitness testimonies, they begin to realize there's something very unusual about the destructive power of this mudslide.
There were trees and soil flying through the air, even the roof of a house.
It would have been impossible to get out of the whale. The speed of a train or a lorry or something, the devastation was felt all the way down to the small town of Tessero.
What is so unusual from the reports is the speed and violence of the mudslide. From the seismometer readings, investigators can calculate that the mudslide reached an astonishing 90 kilometers per hour. This is more like a tidal wave. Investigators study similar natural phenomena from around the world. This is actual footage of a mudslide in Russia. Although on a much smaller scale, it's behaving in a very similar way to the dam burst in the Stava Valley, with the speed of water, but the destructive force of mud. Studying records of dam bursts like this one gives the investigators the answer they're looking for. They believe they know why the Stava mudslide caused devastation on such a massive scale. But they have to travel back in time to be sure. 210 seconds before disaster. The upper dam's outer wall saturates with water, but it's still solid. Another second and the dam breaks. The outer wall collapses and falls away with such power that it registers higher on the Richter scale than normal earth tremors in this region. This footage of a real earthquake in 1950s Japan shows what happens to the ground when a shockwave is so powerful that the solid earth acts just like a liquid. It's called liquefaction. Liquefaction occurs when water under high pressure enters a solid structure made up of grains like sand, forcing them apart. They become suspended in the water, making a very dense liquid, almost twice the density of water, but with all its fluid properties. It's exactly what happens when the upper dam collapses in Stava.
As the outer shell disappeared down the slope, the tailings behind no longer had any support, and they become suspended in the water that surrounds them. You finish up with a high concentration of quite heavy particles suspended in the water. So it's like a double density material. And this liquefies, turns into a fluid, and flows down the slope.
Investigators now understand the critical chain of events that caused the catastrophe. "209 seconds. The upper dam is turning to quicksand. The grains have lost their ability to stick together as a solid structure. "198 seconds to go. This dense liquid suspension is now pouring out of the upper dam and into the lower dam, which is critically overloaded. For 19 seconds, the liquefied mud from both dams collects and grows. As the dams disintegrate, they throw up enormous clouds of dust high into the air. It looked like smoke to Umberto, Clemente, and their father Lucio.
It really looked like a fire.
179 seconds left. The lower dam reaches bursting point. It collapses, unleashing the liquefied tailings. 159 seconds. The mud flow strikes the village of Stava, 800 meters away, destroying 24 houses and 3 hotels where over 100 tourists are sitting down to lunch. They all perish. 99 seconds to go. The mud wave hits the northern reaches of the town of Tesoro. Umberto and Clemente are in their father's van driving up the valley road.
My father didn't waste a second.
He said, "Get out quickly and get up the slope."
Umberto and Clemente escape, but the wave, traveling at 90 kilometers per hour, kills their father, Lucio. 79 seconds. The flow reaches the street where Alma Trettel lives and wipes out 17 homes. She hears the roar and goes to the balcony, where she sees the mudslide hurtling down the street.
I didn't have time to say a word before the whole house fell away from under my feet.
As the house collapses, Alma is hurled from the balcony and ends up 300 meters away. "51 seconds to go. Lucia Morandini is in the storeroom of her father Mario's sports shop.
Non può essere. Vado a vedere.
She hears the rumble of the mudslide and opens the door.
It seemed like a hurricane. There were trees and soil flying through the air. I was hurled back into the storeroom. I had no time to think.
What feels like a hurricane to Lucia is the blast wave that precedes the mudslide all the way down the valley. Powerful enough to destroy buildings and uproot trees in its own right, it looks like a whitish cloud made up of fine sand from the tailings dams. An eyewitness in Tesoro took this photo. 40 seconds to go. The mudslide slams into the ancient bridge of Tesoro. The wave of mud is so deep that some of it crashes over the 30-meter bridge. In just 3.5 minutes, 230,000 cubic meters of mud, water and debris have laid waste to an area of almost 44 square kilometers. Tailings dams operate all over the world. Are thousands of people at risk? Is the disaster at Stava an isolated incident? Professor Colombo wants to find out. He turns to the maintenance records for the 2 tailings dams. His search yields shocking results. A mining dam has collapsed in the southern Italian Alps. Now investigators are scouring through maintenance records to find out if the company in charge has regularly monitored stability. In 1974, the municipality of Tesoro ordered Fluormine, the company that owned the mine, to carry out inspections. Results of the tests showed that the slope angle of the upper dam was exceptionally high and its instability nearing danger levels.
The engineer who carried out these tests was surprised that they had not collapsed earlier. This should have served as a warning. But nothing was done, the situation was covered up, and work carried on as normal.
This was 10 years before the disaster. The findings prompt the investigation team to dig deeper. They discover a catalogue of errors. The soil is completely unsuitable to support the dams. The ground is too marshy to allow adequate drainage, an essential requirement for their stability. Without proper drainage, the walls can't dry out and become solid or stable. What's more, the foundations for the upper dam have been partially laid on the lower dam. It means the upper dam has been partly built on the wet mud of the lower dam rather than solid ground. But most amazing of all was the inadequate repair of the broken pipe in the upper dam. With so many problems, the mining dams were an accident waiting to happen.
It was built at the limit of its capacity to stand in a stable manner. It required only the slightest disturbance to this to cause it to collapse. There was no factor of safety, no leeway, no margin of error at all. And the slightest disturbance to all of this would have caused the collapse. And it's perhaps surprising that the structure didn't collapse a good deal sooner than it actually did.
The investigation team's findings were compelling enough to seek a prosecution. In 1988, they went to trial. The Stava Valley disaster inquiry took 7 years to complete. In the end, 10 people, 8 from the 5 companies that had run the mine since the building of the upper dam, and 2 members of the regional council in charge of mine safety were found guilty of culpable disaster and multiple manslaughter. They were all given prison sentences. The magistrate noted in his ruling that if 1/10 of the money spent on the trial had been invested in the safety of the tailings dams, the accident would not have taken place. Vincenzo Campadel was manager of the mine when the accident occurred and received a 3-year suspended sentence.
We can all be said to have been at fault. Right back up the line to myself, because we didn't carry out, I guess, the necessary and continuous inspections that we should have done.
Today, Alma Trettel has to live with the loss of her 4-year-old son, Marco, her husband, Stefano, and her mother, Maria, in the tragedy. She almost died herself, yet she no longer feels resentment towards the people responsible.
I don't think it's up to me to judge these men. I'm not even going to start. I know I used to feel angry because I thought, you had the duty to make safety checks and you didn't do them. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened. But, you know, feeling resentment for the rest of your life towards these people, you just end up feeling bad yourself. So I said to God, I leave them to you. I leave them in your hands.
After the disaster, Clemente de Florian took over his father's carpentry business. His brother Umberto, transformed by the events of the trial surrounding the disaster, decided to become a lawyer. After recovering in hospital, Lucia Morandini eventually took over her father's sports shop and has since expanded the business, opening 5 new shops in neighboring towns. She now has a 9-year-old son, Igor. Alma Trettel spent months in hospital recovering from multiple injuries. Rebuilding her life has taken a long time.
I had lots of friends to help me, as well as my brothers and sisters who were very close to me. For 5 years it was really hard. But then I met my current husband and I got a bit of hope back into my life. And I saw a bigger light at the end of the tunnel than I was seeing before. Then we had 2 children, and now I'm happy about the life that I've been able to rebuild for myself.
17 years after the tragedy, Graziano Lucchi, who lost his parents, co-founded the Stava Foundation as a reminder of what happened on July the 19th, 1985.
It's important for people to know what happened. We especially want people to know the causes, who is responsible for this tragedy, because only this knowledge will allow us to try to avoid other similar tragedies from happening elsewhere.
But the warnings have not been heeded. In the aftermath of the Stava trial, although the safety laws surrounding tailings dams were improved in Italy, elsewhere, lessons are still to be learned. Since 1985, there have been no fewer than 33 similar accidents worldwide, 8 of these occurring in the United States. In Stava, the mine never reopened after the tragedy. But following extensive restoration, the valley has regained its former beauty. The tourists have come back, and the locals have helped each other to rebuild their community and return to a peaceful, idyllic way of life.